Hey everyone, my name is Yaro and you're listening to the DIY Small Business Podcast. I'm a web designer, a small business mentor, and a tech fairy, and I'm excited to bring you another interview today with the wonderful Ash Reed and Libby Smith of Starlight Strategy. These two absolute dream babes have been clients of mine as well. I've built a website at workwithlibby.com, which you can find linked in the show notes. And I had a chance to talk to them about all the magic they're bringing into the world. So we spoke about how really looking at the stars, thinking about these archetypes, and reading our charts for businesses as well can inform beautiful decision making, really good creative flow, team building, and just all around bring more intention and love into the way that we're making decisions, dreaming, and taking our next steps. So yeah, I am really excited to share this conversation. I hope you'll follow their work. They're so wonderful to talk to and have so many insights to share. Just a few announcements from me. I will be taking some time off in December, both in the first week because I'm having family stay in Scotland, and then over the holidays as well. So if you would like to work with me in 2020, either for tech support or making a marketing plan for your year, business mentoring, or creating a website together, then please book a Fila call for mid-December. That's all linked up on my website, and you'll find it in the show notes as well. And you can also consider taking my Tarot as a Light in the Dark class in January. Not strictly business related, but I think a really beautiful tool as well for business decision making, and just a generally really good way to start in the year. It's going to be a small intimate group, 3 live classes on a Saturday, starting in January, and we will do some rituals, really connect with our intuition, think about what we want to make of this year, and hopefully not get caught up in this new year kind of madness where it's all about going to the gym and being someone who we're not. So I want to keep it really grounded and fun and come up with intentions and ideas that feel really good and authentic to what we want from life. So check that out and enjoy the show. Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining me for another conversation. I'm really excited to speak to two of former clients of mine who help businesses make use of the magic of the stars. So as you know, if you're listening to Daydream Roles, I'm also really into astrology, into more beautiful ways of living and enchanting life. And I love that there's such a big crossover between the two different worlds that I'm kind of living in. So Ash and Libby are two such beautiful people. We've built a website together over at workwithlibby.com, and it was really just so insightful and like refreshing and heartwarming to work through the content and think about their ideas and the way that they're bringing these insights into the world. And as you know, I'm also really excited just to speak to people who are doing things in business differently and who have a vision that's exciting to share. So I'm so excited to speak to you today. Hi, welcome. Thank you so much for making time.
Hi, Yara. We're so excited to be here today. Thank you.
Yay. Oh, by the way, it's also my first interview with two people, which is so cool. I kind of can't believe that this hasn't happened before, and I'm really glad to be breaking that kind of ice with you. So that's cool.
Yippee. We're excited too. Very excited.
I always like to start my conversations by asking where you are in the world right now, what nature is like around you, because I feel that gives listeners a chance to kind of imagine beyond time and space how this conversation came to be.
Wonderful. Yes, I'm Ash, and I'm speaking from Wisconsin, the central part of Wisconsin in Eau Claire. And there is rain on my window. It's not raining right now. We had a lovely little storm last night, and it's certainly fall time. Some leaves have dropped. Some maple trees are red, but there's still quite a bit of green happening. So it's fabulous. And I was hoping Libby will talk about the moon what's happening with the moon right now, because you have a good view of the moon when it rises.
Oh my gosh, yes. So yeah, I'm about 30 miles down the road from Ash. We used to live in the same town, but I'm currently in my office in Menominee, Wisconsin. And so I'm kind of in my little cave here. But yeah, the weather here yesterday was lovely. It was like my favorite fall weather, where it was like a beautiful blue sunny day. And it was just like crisp in the air, like that little bit of chill. But yeah, I now live in an apartment. The floor overlooks a lake, and the moon rises right over the lake. So the last couple nights have been just like enchanting. Like I just like lay on my couch and look out the window at the moon rising. You really can't ask for anything better. So, and yeah, this like a storm rolled through like at 4 or 5 this morning. Like Ash said, it had been raining. Mm-hmm. And everyone is talking about it this morning, like out and about the storm that rolled through. I slept right through it, slept like a baby. So
that sounds so beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. So I would love to know more about how you got into astrology, and you can take this anywhere you like. You can be practical or magical or both. I don't know. It doesn't have to be a binary. I'm sorry, that was a silly question. Just tell me everything.
Oh, very good. Yeah, it's a great question for us, because it is a good story, and actually such a good story that we kind of featured it on our website that you built for us, Yarrow, that we each kind of put my version of the story and Ash's version of the story on there, because I think there's a lot of people kind of coming to astrology right now, and I certainly put myself in that category. It's really been, just maybe about not even 2 years since I've really used astrology on a regular basis in my life. I didn't know my sun, moon, rise. I knew my sun for a long time, but didn't know my moon and rising until, March of last year, I guess, really. If am I getting my dates right? Ash will confirm that for me. I'm not good at keeping dates, but
you're good.
Yeah, so actually, and I can thank Ash for getting me into it. It was like this chance meeting that we had at a mutual friend's farm, and she sort of, approached me with some questions, or wanting to know when my birth date was, and I was just like, what? Why are you asking me this? Why? And so that was like in September of 1 year, and they're like, by the following March, I was booking a reading with her. So it really kind of opened this door for me, and I think she saw something in me that I was a person who maybe needed that, or was really going to be very open to that. And so I've been using astrology really kind of daily since March of last year. So
beautiful.
That's so cool. Do you want to add to that, Ash?
Well, of course. I always have been able to remember not only people's names, but their birthdays. And I thought that was kind of odd, because people would just say, I never remember people's names. I started gardening by the moon about a decade ago. And what that is utilizing where the moon is in its phase and the zodiac sign to decide whether you're going to plant or you're going to weed or you're going to harvest. That's kind of the basis of it. And I use that for our farming adventures and gardening. And just probably about 4 years ago, it hit me that I could use this for my entire life. Not only for the rest of my life, but for in every little aspect that I could. And being 2 out of 10 planets in Gemini, my sun and my Mars are in Gemini, I have little passions, and then they fade away. Well, this astrology is not going anywhere for me. And I use it to book dentist appointments. I use it to say, is this a good day for the Yarrow interview? Well, let me check my calendar. Perfect. Yes. So it is a part of me that I don't know, it's just so, it's stuck to me like my shadow, the Gemini shadow.
That's so cool and beautiful, and makes so much sense to me. I mean, I'm not quite there yet with the dentist appointments, but I'm definitely open to it.
Yeah, I'm not quite there yet either. I do like look at the moon phase every day and look at where the moon is every day. And I'm like, I'm very aware of that in my life. I would love to get to the point where I'm using it at kind of like the point where Ash is. But again, I think for her, it's very like sort of like ingrained at this point of like thinking about those things. And so I'm using it for kind of like bigger things at this point. But, you know, it's just
totally.
the more time you spend with it, the more you do kind of want to use it for more things.
Yeah, totally.
Definitely.
I'm wondering, maybe this is a strange question, but I'm wondering what you wish everyone knew about the stars. Like maybe this is something that got you really excited, or maybe it's something that you feel is like the most practical, tangible, exciting thing, or something else. I don't know.
Yeah, so what everyone should know, yes. What I hope would be for people to figure out, and it's actually quite simple, search to what moon phase they were born under. Because we were all born under, you know, some point of the moon phase, regardless if we talk about tropical zodiac astrology or Vedic Indian astrology. We're all in that same moon phase. And then to learn the keywords of the energies, because it can be very different from being a very internal person or a very visible in the public eye person. And that's, you know, that's just like a small piece that makes so much sense.
Yeah, that's something that's been really interesting for me too, because I learned that I was born like just after a new moon. And then it's been interesting as Ash has done more like astrology with a lot of my friends, how many people in my life then were also born under a similar moon phase, right? So that's some of that power of like as you get into understanding your astrology and like moving beyond just kind of like sun, moon, rising things, that you start to realize the impact that it is having on your life as you find these commonalities between your friends and the people you're choosing to be in relation with, either personally or in business. That it's fascinating. So yeah.
That is so funny because I mean, obviously, astrology it's a universal, but there's so many things you could have brought up. But I was just looking at my moon phase yesterday and thinking like, oh, I really want to learn more about that. I was born just like the next day was the dark moon, so it was the very end of the moon cycle, which makes a lot of sense to me.
That is amazing. Total permission to be a hermit.
Yeah, totally. I was like, yes.
yes, validation.
Yeah, I think I follow the moon stuff more than anything. I mean, I think because it is like really accessible, right? The moon is very visible to us, and like we can go out and we can look at it and kind of commune with the moon. And one of the things that I learned, and this is, you know, it's like I think I learned this during Vanessa Sage's Sage Priestess program. It was like one of the best things I learned in that. Somebody presented this idea that the moon is actually in our daytime sky as much as it is in our nighttime sky, and that it's sort of always present for us, right? Like we think of the moon as being very like, you know, belonging to the nighttime, but if you start paying attention, you can go out and find it most days, you know, for at least part of the day in the daytime sky as well, and that a lot of the times it's there even when you can't see it. And that's like, just thinking about that was very powerful for me, of, you know, kind of the continual presence of the moon. And then also that sort of like cycle of then when it isn't present, and kind of like being able to go into that place on a monthly basis of that kind of life, death, rebirth cycle has been incredibly powerful. So,
yeah, for me too.
Well said. Thanks, Libby.
Yes. I would love to kind of circle into the world of business a little bit. So we have already touched on this idea of cyclical living a little bit, and I think that's so powerful, especially as people who are building small businesses and are present in the online world where there's so much story around constant expansion. I think there's something so healing to return to the idea of cycles. But even more broadly than that, like I wonder how you're weaving astrology into your business and how this all came to be.
Yeah, thank you. It's really interesting with Starlight Strategy, the business that Ash and I are doing together. Like Ash does her own work under astrology and like being an astrologer for people. And I work in this world where I'm doing organizational development, program evaluation, strategic planning with people in a sort of an academic setting, right? And I'm working with clients kind of, all over the country doing this kind of work without astrology, right? So I have this like foundation, and Ash has this foundation in astrology. And so like, as we were starting to talk and I was using more astrology in my life, I'm like, we just need to bring these things together. And it's, it's interesting. I've really made this transformation, kind of like I said, since I started working with Ash, of using astrology more. And I come from this background of being very sort of like evidence-based. My master's degree is in psychology, right? So, I come from this place where like I used to wield the term evidence-based as both sort of a soft, fuzzy blanket and a sword. It was like, oh, if there's not evidence for it, it can't be true. And through my own sort of like spiritual like awakening, I really, I, very late came to this idea that like, oh, what we think of as evidence is just like, I kind of call it white people's evidence now. It's just like, there's like one standard for evidence, and it's not, just because we can't see it, we don't know it's true. And so I came to see, like, even though I still kind of live in this evidence-based world where we want to use data to like help organizations make decisions and help businesses grow, you want to have like these like traditional sources of data that you can also bring like astrology in and lay it on top of that. And it is another source of data. And I'm really in this place where, and I hear this conversation happening out there, is that I want, we want to be sort of a soul aligned business, right? And as we try to move from this place of like the capitalist patriarchy, that we can take what we have from that, these traditional methods of organizational development, and start to incorporate these other ways of thinking, astrology and tarot and other things, and really come up with a different sort of approach to doing these things, where astrology becomes a big piece of that. And so that's been this like really important shift for me, of seeing astrology as just this other form of data that we can use in growing our business and building our business in a way that's much more kind of like soul aligned. And so I bring all that stuff from, traditional organizational development, but Ash is the one who kind of makes the magic with the astrology at this point. So I'll let her talk a little bit about how she's doing that for us and our clients. And yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. I not only educate and then help people based on astrology make decisions or have affirmations and validations of why they do something. But I also use it for my personal life. So it's like that I walk my talk my walk my talk. Because if I'm not using it, then it's not like that muscle. The muscle will atrophy if you're not using it. So if I not only have the passion for it, but then I am honing in on specific days to do something, and then to have the courage to say, no, I'm not going to do it for that day because for whatever reason, then I'm really finding this backbone of support for myself, my personal life, but then also with business and work. So then I can draw up a chart, and that's a stationary chart, meaning when we were born, that chart is with us for our lifetime. And then the planets just keep on moving after that. So with these stationary charts, you can basically get your foundation of when you started your business. That could be when you launched your website, or when you first received money from somebody. That can be the start of your business. So we can go back and figure out those dates for somebody to draw up a business chart, or we can basically relaunch and pick a day in the future. And that's a forecast. It's called electional astrology, where I can figure out the best day of the moon. The best day where the moon is in a sign that is displaying helpful information for the business, depending on if you're service-based or product-based. And
we went through a very involved process of deciding which day to launch our website that you built for us, Yarrow, of like really looking, we choosing like, all right, which planet do we want to rule our chart? Which, Ash can talk about it more in detail, but
absolutely,
like we considered not, the website was more or less done in August, and we considered not launching it until spring because of like wanting to choose a different kind of like chart ruler. We did end up launching it, kind of shortly after it was done. But we were very careful in like deciding, like, going through a decision-making process of like, here are the options. What do we think? Using both the astrology information and then also like kind of our business kind of ideas of like, well, what are the things we want to be doing? Who do we want to be working with? Why do we want this out there? And so using both of those sort of, again, traditional business ideas about like what we need to do, but then also considering the astrology piece of all our options.
Yeah, and I wasn't afraid to actually. We had two different charts. I had a chart in I think it was April, and then after looking at it more, excuse me, that was rude. I'm going to turn it off. So not only was
like Big Ben.
Yeah, it was this note of like, oh, we're doing this correctly by me saying, well, I had this chart back in April, and I was like, we could get a better chart. And so I basically just used that as like our planning, our brainstorming chart. And then I said, okay, now we're going to go and look at it. Is it going to be better at the beginning of September or in the spring? And after lots of mental work, I said, no, this is great. Let's do it. We literally launched that one just about 12 hours after the new moon. And when the moon and the sun were in Virgo. So,
ooh.
and Virgo rules fine detail, perfectionism, and it's ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is our planet of communication, which is what Libby and I are all about, communicating.
My chart is also ruled by Mercury.
Yes, it is. So it was just this, yes, it takes a lot of mental work and a lot of weighing out your options, but in the end, I think it really adds a tool to this system of business.
So it's really what we want to do is help people make those kinds of decisions using that extra layer of information from astrology.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes so much sense to me. And there's two really beautiful things here that I would love to circle back to. The first one is, I think I just am in love with this idea of slowing down and really bringing more intention in by choosing the right date. And I think in this online world that we're living in, it's so tempting to go just for the quickest possible date and just push things out there and not giving ourselves enough time to really reflect and grow and position ourselves in the wider context of the work that we're doing. And so I think that sounds to me like such a beautiful tool to facilitate that slowing down and also to think about just everything in the bigger picture. I think having been on Instagram for years now, I feel like shouldn't have that happened yesterday is like my constant like the echo that I'm still hearing in my ears, and I think just with like how the internet has now shaped our lives, I feel just thinking back to my childhood where we didn't have the internet, timing was just a different thing. There was a different pace to things sometimes. And I love the idea of looking to the stars to kind of bringing that back. And the other thing I really loved, I loved everything that you said, obviously. But the other thing I want to tease out a little bit is like, what you said about evidence-based approaches, because I really love learning and curiosity, and I love engaging with academic concepts to some extent, when they're accessible and fun to play with. And I agree with you that I think that our understanding of what evidence is has narrowed down so much and is very much shaped by capitalism and white supremacy. And if evidence can include evidence in my body, then I'm so for it. And I think that's another thing that I'm hearing your work really do is like introducing us to these different archetypes and facilitating a way for us to reach into our own knowing and our bodies and our sense of time and pace and right relationship even to see what feels good. which is like a conscious untangling also of the collective stories that we're living in sometimes. That was a bit of a waffle.
No, I love that. I mean, you're 100% right though about the different ways of knowing. And if, like you said, if one way of knowing can be what we feel in our own body, I mean, that's valid. And like we have, and and that's not to say also that like, if some people don't have that kind of knowing, that's okay too, is that like everybody has to kind of bring their own ways of knowing to this and kind of be intentional about the data and the evidence that they want to look at and bring into their work, right? And we don't all have to like make the same decisions based on the same things. So I think that level of intention is really what I think our work can bring. The slowing down and being really intentional about like making choices about, something Ash and I talk about a lot about is like the right day to have a meeting, right? And like was that, what sort of energy are you going to need for this meeting? So like, what's the right day that you can choose for that? Like, you're still going to have like day-to-day meetings that just like kind of need to happen. But like, if you have something like important and you need a particular outcome from, how can you be thoughtful about,
right,
choosing the right day for that? And I think in that process of also slowing down and considering the astrology, you really also slowing down and considering what your intention is for the meeting, what you want to get out of that meeting, what are your goals for the meeting, and even just those steps will help the outcomes of your work. And I think, again, like you said, Yarrow, sometimes we get in that cycle of just go, and like we have to get things done, and the pressures that kind of like the capitalist society puts on us is like how thinking in this astrology way can kind of like break you out of that a little bit. And I think that's kind of that process of sort of like decolonizing our work, right?
Yes, totally. Another thing I would love to ask about is like how astrology comes into relationship for you, or that could be relationships between humans or between businesses. I remember for me, when I first came across astrology as a teenager, it was all about like who to date and when, and if it's all going to be a fit and stuff.
Yes.
And that has evolved a little bit, I'm glad to say, but sometimes not a ton. So I would love to learn more about that.
Sure. With intimate relationships, I do have to say, though, that oftentimes we just look at our sun sign and the person's sun sign. And if I did that for my life partner, Joshua, he's a Scorpio and I'm a Gemini, like they're like, no, don't do it. But with the natal chart, there's a lot more depth. He has underlyings of Gemini. I have underlyings of Scorpio. So we're very compatible. So there's ways of looking at two charts separately and then seeing the compatibleness or the polarities of those. And then you can put those two together, and that makes one chart combining those. And that's a synastry chart, and then you can get the information from that. But just understanding, when I learned a little bit about myself, very basic, and then I went to his chart and then our daughter's chart, this is like my claim to fame, is that I had less stress in my life because I could point out pieces of why he was acting that way with his chart. It's like, oh, he's supposed to be doing this. Oh, she is like this because of this piece in her chart. And, can I say that you can connect everything to a chart? Absolutely, I can. Not everybody is, but it's just like that basic. And the basic would be the sun, moon, rising. And then if you know the birth time, what houses that sun and moon are in, that tells you quite a bit. So in businesses can work out as well. You can find out where you can mesh with the person, how that person's thinking and how they express themselves, and how is that different. So you definitely get a lot of understanding and compassion for people around you, not only in intimate situations, but at the workplace.
Yeah, I think one thing I want to add to that too is this idea that it's all about awareness, right? And that,
Yes.
kind of what Ash
Yes.
was saying about, like, if she just looked at her and Josh's chart together, on the surface, it would have seemed like, oh, no, 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 don't do that. And I think we really try to do a lot of that sort of like, we're not trying to like warn people or say, oh, you people don't go together, or like,
Right.
like this, it's like, if there is something that's kind of seems to be a conflict in a chart, it's being aware of that, of like, oh, this is where our conflict point is going to be. People are going to have conflict.
Oh,
But
yeah.
if you know like the ways in which that conflict might show up and the times in which that conflict might show up, which astrology can tell you, you can work with so much more kind of awareness and knowledge, right? And like, you're still going to like have issues with people, and people are still going to have points where like they don't see eye to eye, but that's the beauty of it, right? Like if we want to have a successful team in our business, we need people who think in different ways. You don't want to build out a team of people who all work in the same way. So as you use astrology as a tool to do that, you're bringing this really kind of like soul-aligned approach with using astrology. Because I will say, people use all sorts of tools to make these decisions about teams. They use the MBTI, they use personality tests. There's a million tools out there that businesses are using. I see astrology as in some ways no different, but also maybe a slightly superior tool, because it really is getting at us at a soul level, right? Rather than being like, I think a tool like the MBTI is very point in time. It's who we are right now. It's who we are in this context of the people we're working with. Whereas astrology is really like, I think, getting at who we are as people, right? And so if we can understand that about one another in either our personal relationships or in a team setting, that compassion and understanding that Ash talks about, I think is so much more available when you have this knowledge of each other's astrology.
Yeah, and a piece that comes up often is I'll tell someone according to their natal chart, like, your mind works very quickly, very systematically, and it has this way of almost understanding things on a whole level, whereas maybe somebody else is going to be a little bit slower. They need repetition. And this is just your Mercury sign, because Mercury for everybody rules our mind. So if we can just understand just that piece from the chart, it brings in so much depth. And then the awareness, absolutely. Like, just be aware that that person just needs a little bit longer than you do. And then the compassion flows in.
Yeah, I love that. I really feel like this bringing this language in of different planets and archetypes is so much more gentle and expansive than saying you're wrong and you keep doing this thing, and like, I see this pattern and oh my god, this is just not working. Whereas I can see, but my Venus is in Scorpio, what am I meant to do?
Yes, right. And like the piece that came up with me was just like, before all this, was like, why are you like this? Like, how can you do it like this? Like, I don't do it that way. Well, that's our unique charts. So
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I feel like we have already spoken about my next question a little bit, but I would like to go even deeper and see if you have more to share about how you're working with other businesses in a really practical way, or maybe if you have any tips to share about what businesses can gain from working with astrology.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I think we really did want people to come away today with like a few like takeaways of things that they could even start doing on their own, as they think about maybe working with us, is really like getting a calendar and starting to follow the moon, and paying, like, I have a calendar that lays on my altar, and I look at it every morning, and I look to see what, and I kind of, I would love to say that I just kind of like intuitively know at this point, but I still like check the calendar every morning, and like double check what like phase it's in. I usually know the phase of the moon, but double check like what sign it's in, and like if there's a void of course, and like just knowing that on a date, just that piece, even if I don't know my chart or anything else, just starting to follow the moon would be, and that's, you can pick up like really any calendar and get a lot of that information, and then like starting to think about like what that cycle means for you, and like just paying attention to start out with. Don't make any decisions or don't change anything, but just pay attention to your own energy and kind of what's happening.
Right. And it's just as simple as knowing if we're close to the new moon or if we're close to the full moon.
Mm-hmm.
Because that full moon, there's more abundance, there's more energy, there's more vitality and light to the moon. So we're also going to be displaying that. And then if it's the new moon, we're going to be maybe more quiet, more soft-spoken, more wanting to stay home. It's as simple as that. And then to go a little bit, another layer to add to that would be to figure out the element that the moon is in. So then, of course, that's learning the zodiac signs and what element, air, earth, fire, or water. And that can help decide if it's a fire moon, if the moon is in a fire sign, then we're more bodacious, we're more bold, we're more courageous. On the flip side, when the moon is in a water sign, we are maybe not as verbal. We want to communicate on a different level. There's more emotion in our day. When the moon is in an earth sign, that's when our to-do lists come out. That's when we want to clean or organize, do the practical things of life. And when the moon is in an air sign, that is when we want to talk or communicate.
What do we do when the moon is void of course, Ash?
So that gets a little bit trickier, because then you have to figure out, this is all the geometry of where the moon is. It's the void, of course, I'll back up. The moon moves into a different sign about every 2 days. So it literally goes through the whole zodiac wheel, the 12 signs, in a 28-day-ish cycle. So having the moon in one sign for 2 days, there's a transition period from one sign to the next. Without getting too much into the geometry and signs of it, sometimes the void, of course, can last minutes. Sometimes it can last all day long. And ideally, when a void, of course, lasts all day long, or even just a couple of hours, it's more of a spiritual time, or it's more of a time to connect with intuition and the feminine aspect of life. When it's not in that void, of course, it's easier to get things done or have action and goals and go towards that. It's literally the doing and the being of us as a human. There are times to do, and there are times to be. And that void, of course, can really help, because if you're in a meeting and the moon is void, of course, nothing will come of it. And I have air quotes, nothing will come of it, which means you're making decisions, and later on down the road, you're just like, oh, we have to redo this whole thing, or why didn't that work out? Well, possibly because the moon was not making any aspects to other planets, and that's that void of course piece.
Mm-hmm. So we're actually working on putting together a new offering of sort of a void of course calendar for people, so that they can, like, that would just be one like easy layer to kind of like pay attention to, of like, can you like really utilize that time during when the moon is void of course to your advantage, and work with that a little bit. So that's something we're working on right now, is putting together kind of just an easy reference calendar for people to see just the void of course. Yeah.
That is so cool, because I think that's fiddly information to get sometimes, like when I'm looking things up with the apps and the website sites that I'm aware of, the voidness of the moon is not something that's in my face a lot of the time.
Yes, right. And it's just another piece that we can add without even knowing your natal chart. It's the where the moon is now. And it's, I don't know, I love it.
Me too.
So those are all like good places for people to start, of like developing that own personal awareness. But in terms of like how we're working with people, we on our website, we have several different sort of packages listed, but who we're mainly working with now is sort of creative entrepreneurs, like individuals, right? That's definitely the, way Ash has been working with people on that individual level. And then we're trying to bring in sort of that like business side as well. And like making sure people have the business tools they need, in addition to having this like piece about astrology to make specific decisions about their business. So that's sort of like an entry level point for like kind of creative entrepreneurs. But then we also have like a strategic planning where we're really looking at like businesses that have been like in business for a while, needing to make some future decisions. How can we help you sort of like build out sort of like a 5-year plan for your business that is both aligned with your like own personal goals, business planning, but then also the astrology piece of like, what can you expect from your personal astrology, your team's astrology, your business's astrology. Ash talked earlier about building that chart for your business. And we can really tailor a package to any size business, depending on how many people are on the team, the size of the business, and build out a plan for how we'll work together. And we'll co-facilitate those sort of like meetings with people up front, and then develop those plans so people have like kind of takeaways from that of like something to guide them over a 5-year period, which is sort of a traditional cycle for businesses. But we can really tailor that to whatever a person's needs are. And then finally, we touched a little bit on the building relationships, as what we'd really like to be doing is working with teams and like helping them to work better together and work in this new soul aligned way, and like helping people understand each other better so that we can do our business in a way that really like feeds our souls, that we can see each other and have compassion for one another. And I think if we do those things together, we ultimately do better work as well. So I think that's the way we're most excited about working with people.
I'm excited to bring fresh perspective to people's businesses, because it can get sort of dragged on and it's another meeting. But then once you start talking to them about their specific aspects or how this person communicates and the way that their mind thinks, and that it just gets like really exciting. And then you hear them say like, oh, well, I wonder how that person thinks, or, like, what about my kids? I'm like, yep, that's a whole nother thing. But we're talking about the workplace, because you're right. If we can have the awareness for our coworkers, because that's who we spend a lot of time with. And sure, there can be it's definitely like a therapy time too. It turns into that, but that's the nature of humanity, where we want to understand and process with each other. And why not figure out in a way that is fresh, and we have awareness for each other through astrology. And I don't know. It's helped my life personally so much that I just get giddy talking to people about it, and they're just in such awe. And a lot of times it is like, it, and if we can confirm it through this science, then you feel better about it and you can lean into it a little bit more. Oh, Libby, you're here to start things. You are here to help others start things. That's just her new moon phase. Yarrow, you're here to help people complete something. Oh my gosh, I have a website, but I have no idea how to do it. And then Yarrow works the magic, and she can do it from her lovely home there. And that fits her. She doesn't need to be in a big corporate office and in front of all the people. No, absolutely not. So it allows, I think at the bottom line, it allows us to be better people.
Yeah, I want to speak to what you said, Ash, about there is this like almost therapeutic nature. And I definitely found that for myself, is that it really did, we've talked a lot about having compassion for others, but understanding my astrology and working with my astrology has allowed me to have so much more compassion for myself, and like to be more myself. I think, that I understand myself in a different way. And then how I bring that to work then too. It's really been helpful, but it does become like, I think, therapeutic too, as you start to work through those relationships with people, and like maybe a coworker that you haven't gotten along with, of like, the same way you might, need to understand your children better, thinking about how you bring that into the workplace can be really helpful. And I think, there is this hesitancy to talk about, the woo things at work, and I put that in air quotes, of like, oh, I can't possibly talk about this at work. But, that's what we're really hoping to help people do, is kind of bring this out of the shadows a little bit, and make this something that we can use as a tool at work, and to by integrating it with some of the more traditional tools, giving people that entry point to say, okay, we're going to do this strategic planning together, but we're going to bring in this other layer of data, which is the astrology. And so we can still kind of be grounded and call ourselves a business, and I think that we're at a point, where some people still need that, right? Mm-hmm. They need to feel like what they're doing is very legitimate. And, we're hoping through the process of coaching people through this, that they can lean, like Ash said, lean more into the astrology of it, and lean into that self-compassion and compassion for others.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really beautiful and makes so much sense. I'm really, really excited to see your business grow and flourish, and to see the project about the void moon that you're working on. That's really cool. So can we maybe, before we go, recap what you're offering and tell everyone where to find you?
You bet. Well, I know, Yarrow, you mentioned at the top that you've helped us build this amazing website. So we did build it under kind of this workwithlibby.com is sort of the umbrella for it, because I actually work in a bunch of different capacities doing this organizational development work. But you can go to www. Do we need to say that still? www. No, I don't think so.
Cool.
Yeah, starlightstrategy.com, and you'll get to the right place. And so there you can find our offerings, and we'll get the word out about the new Void of Course offering. But we've got several packages there. But really, you can just go set up a 30-minute appointment with us, free kind of consultation, to learn more about what we do, and we can hear about what your needs are, and you can learn a little bit more from us about our approach. And we just want to connect with people and talk about what they want to do with their business.
Cool. Thank you so much.
And adding the piece for Instagram, it's Starlight Strategy.
Yay!
Yes.
Cool.
I love Instagram.
Ash, do you want to also name your website for your business?
Astrology.
Oh, yes.
All I had to do was add an H to astrology, and it goes with Ash. It was a big healthy ego choice. I like to say that there's healthy ego and unhealthy ego, and it was kind of just go for it, because it's so simple, and it's just adding my interpretation of it. I feel like I'm part of a new generation of astrologers that really try to not speak the language of astrology to people, because we don't know it yet, and soon we might. And it just might be like second nature when we talk about my sun is in the 8th house and it's trining my moon, and people may tap into that in the near future with our help. And I was just talking about my business. There we go, astrology.com.
Thank you so much. We'll link to all of that in the show notes as well. So if anyone didn't catch that, it's all going to be there. It's been so, so beautiful to talk to you two. I'm really excited to share this conversation, and so grateful for all the practical stuff and the wisdom and the insight that you shared. Thank you.
Thank you, Yara. We love what you do, and it has been such a blessing to work with you on our website. I think going back to a little bit what I was saying about needing to feel like that legitimacy, right? Is thinking about building a website with somebody who doesn't speak this language around being soul aligned and using astrology and things like that. So finding someone to work with who we could just feel very comfortable going through this process with was so great. And so we're so grateful to you for helping us. And I know Ash has really dug into your DIY business stuff, and it's been so helpful to us in going through this process. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, what you offered has helped me build my own website. And then when Libby's like, we're going to have Yarrow do our site, I'm like, yes, she gets it way faster than I do. We definitely appreciate you. And this is such an honor.
Thank you. It's been
wonderful.
A joy to work with you. I hope we can speak again next year to see where it's all going. Thank you so much.
We can't
Absolutely.
wait. Thank you.